since the implementation of the NAR settlement at RE/MAX Properties East, we've learned a lot about how our buyer's agents interact with our buyer clients. We want to share some tips we've learned. One thing that I think is very important in this process is when you engage with buyer clients, you have multiple options to create a relationship with that buyer client that also comply with the terms of the NAR settlement, specifically the requirement to have a written agreement that specifies compensation prior to touring a home. One of the most obvious relationships that we have is the exclusive buyer's agency relationship, which essentially means that any property that buyer buys that fits the terms of that agreement, during the time period of that agreement, they're going to use you as their buyer's agent and would owe you compensation. Another type of relationship that we personally really enjoy and think is a great relationship at RE/MAX Properties East is a per showing relationship. It has the same effect as an exclusive relationship, and in fact, it's essentially how everyone has been working with their buyer clients for decades now. We've always worked essentially on a per showing basis when there's been no written agreement to tour the home prior or no written buyer's agency agreement prior to that point in time. So with that being said, we think a per showing basis agreement also has a lot of value, and it's a little bit less cumbersome and a little bit less of a barrier to a relationship than an exclusive relationship with a buyer client, but yet you still enjoy the benefits that if you actually go tour the home in person or virtually, you're insured compensation for working with that buyer. Another option in the field that we think is viable that can help out depending on the nature of the relationship and how it's established is what we call a touring agreement, and it would be essentially the bare minimums required to meet the standard of the NAR settlement, and that would be a written agreement to tour a home that specifies compensation. And in this case, the touring agreement would essentially establish the relationship between the buyer agent and the buyer as unrepresented party at that point in time, and no compensation for the fact you're going to just tour homes. But if you're going to transact a home, there'll be an understanding that another agreement will have to be signed that specifies the compensation for working with that client for that particular home. So again, try to have some options on the table ready to go, have the paperwork ready to go, have the conversation ready to go, the dialogue, and understand why you would use different types of relationships with different buyer clients. That way, you're best ready to serve everyone who comes through the door, and you can quickly and frictionlessly get them into homes so they begin the process of trying to find the right home for them.